Always Auburn with your host, Tyler Crane.
All right, we're back at you with Always Auburn. Fresh off a 31-15 win against the South Alabama Jaguars yesterday, where your Auburn Tigers walked out of Jordan-Hare Stadium 3-0. How nice it is. Ranked number 24 in the country. Actually got a new ranking today. Your Auburn Tigers are now number 22 in the country. So we're climbing those polls as we speak. And there's a big opportunity to climb it a lot more this week as we go into Norman, Oklahoma to face the Oklahoma Sooners. But before we talk about that, let's get a little recap on yesterday's victory over the South Alabama Jaguars. First, we want to talk about a little bit on the offensive side, offensive efficiency. Big shout out to the offense. I think the offense, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't anything fancy. We didn't put up big numbers or anything along the lines of that. But it was clean. It was sharp. There wasn't many mental mistakes and no turnovers, no sacks. And I think that speaks volumes about our offensive line and just the steady momentum that we're gaining in that room, the offensive line room. That is a big part of success in the SEC, and it is just it's a part of football that's overlooked in general. But don't get it twisted. The offensive line is a fundamental aspect of success on the offensive side of the ball. So, offensive line couldn't be more pleased with you. We're not seeing many false start penalties. We're not seeing many holding penalties. We're not seeing sacks. We're just not seeing those errors on the offensive line that really I think Auburn has gotten kind of accustomed to. We have not had very good offensive line play in the past few years, and that in essence has turned out to be a big part of our downfall in so many words that, just having to deal with the negative side of sacks and turnovers really points towards the offensive line. But we're not seeing that this year. We're seeing the offensive line blow people off the ball. We're seeing the offensive line not commit penalties. And we're seeing the offensive line allow our quarterback to get comfortable in the pocket and develop chemistry with our receivers because they're giving them time to do that. So big shout out to the offensive line. Keep doing what you're doing. We're going to need you to travel this week into Norman, Oklahoma, which I think we're going to do that. So couldn't be more pleased with the offensive line. And that leads into Jackson Arnold. I talked a little bit about him in a quick take yesterday after the game, and Jackson Arnold's just coming into his own. He's looking better and better every week. He's gaining that confidence that everybody said he lost when he was at Oklahoma, but I'm not seeing it. He's not showing me any lack of confidence wearing that orange and blue. I can't speak for what he was doing when he was wearing that burgundy, whatever scarlet, whatever color Oklahoma is. There's a million shades of red, and a lot of them we really don't even like. Crimson and burgundy and maroon, all that. Y'all can have all that. We like the orange and blue. So we're not seeing that out of Jackson Arnold this year. He's looking confident. He's looking poised. He's understanding schemes. He's stepping up in the pocket. Did y'all see him yesterday? I mean, he wasn't quick to get out of the pocket. It looked like he was climbing the pocket. It looked like he was fitting into the pocket based on protection by the offensive line. And all that's the little things that kind of get overlooked, but it's so important. It's so important for the success of the offense that he understands that you got to develop that pocket, during the passing plays, and that way your receivers can get depth and they can develop routes and they can get open and find space. So Jackson Arnold is he's looking very good. He's looking very good. There's things to work on. There's always things to work on, but Jackson Arnold is looking good coming out of the first 3 games of the season, and I got a feeling he's only going to get better. So shout out to Jackson Arnold too. Jeremiah Cobb, man, what a force. I mean, this is a guy who's stuck around. He's a senior this year. He could have transferred, could have hit the portal. Never really been a big part of the Auburn offense. He got on the field on special teams, and he got on the field when some players needed to tap out. And but he never really was a fundamental part of the offense. He didn't come away with 15 carries a game. Sometimes I think last year he might only touch the ball about 20 times on the offensive side of the ball throughout the entire season. So to see Jeremiah Cobb kind of getting the reward that he deserves for staying the course and staying at Auburn and just believing, being an Auburn man, it couldn't be more refreshing. And I'm so happy to see that man getting the success that he deserves on the field. And I think this is only the beginning with Jeremiah Cobb, because I think he can score from anywhere on the field. He's kind of one of those hash marks, number sidelines guys that if he can get outside and get up the sideline, you're not going to catch him. He's got blazing speed. So a lot more expected to come from Jeremiah Cobb. We got to keep him healthy. And right now he's looking like the front runner for to be the best player in our running back room. So shout out to Cobb. And just take a second to say, Coach Freeze, I have scrutinized you a lot about your offensive strategical mindset and, just how you game plan and kind of how you coach throughout the game. And Coach Freeze, you picking it up. I saw a great game plan yesterday. Besides the fact that it was only a 2-score game, I saw a great game plan. I saw that you understood that yesterday was about just getting a win. Get in there, get a win, stay healthy, get some more confidence in the offense with Jackson Arnold, and develop some more chemistry with him and these receivers, and let Cobb run crazy and let our big offensive line push people around, keep it clean, not many penalties. And you did all that, Coach Freeze. So, I think that's the best way to approach a game like yesterday. We knew it was gonna be chippy. We knew that it was an early morning kickoff and that South Alabama would come in there with something to prove, and they would play tough. And they have good football players with good football coaches behind them. So it's really just about letting your skilled players be better than their skilled players at the end of the day, and staying healthy and getting out of there with a victory. Because now at the end of the day, we're 3-0, no matter how that looked on the scoreboard with the final score and the overall game statistics. We're 3-0 headed into SEC play. And I think that's what we all said would be a big deal about the success of the overall season for Auburn. We had to get away with these 3 games: Baylor, Ball State, and South Alabama, and heading to Norman, Oklahoma 3-0. And it makes it even better that we're ranked in the top 25. We dropped down 2 more spots today. We're number 22 now. So the momentum's rolling in a lot of areas, and a lot of that concern that came at the beginning of the year, we're answering the bell with those questions, especially on the offensive side of the ball and the quarterback play. Couldn't be more pleased with what we're seeing out of Coach Freeze and Jackson Arnold at this point in the season. You got a little questions about some of the players who didn't play. I noticed that Malcolm Simmons wasn't playing. I noticed that Rashawn Pleasant wasn't playing. We already kind of knew about Champ Anthony, but they did say that he'd be available, but he didn't play, which I think that's a good thing. Amaris Williams apparently separated his shoulder, but then it popped back into place. I bet that was a heck of a strange feeling. And Jay Crawford had a knee-to-knee injury, and they're not really releasing too much information about that injury and if he's going to be available. I don't think they know much yet. I'm sure he's probably got to be evaluated by the training staff, and they go from there. We'll hear more about that. And Eric Singleton apparently had a hip pointer. We saw the play where he went up for a pass. Now, I really wasn't pleased about that with the coaching staff, but, things happen. You can't play football with a scared mentality, and, injuries are going to happen. So, you just hate that it happened at that point in the game to probably one of our best players. But like I said, we hadn't heard much about his availability. I think as long as he can pass, the evaluations, and then nothing's probably going to keep Eric Singleton off the field this week as we go into Norman, Oklahoma. So, and they said that Rashawn and Malcolm, they were kind of kind of shook up, just banged up a little bit. And if they didn't have to get on the field, they don't have to get on the field. Let's get them all the way healthy because we're going to need them next week. And that leads me on to a little bit of the concerns. So, defensive concerns. It's crazy because throughout the entire summer and just leading up to the season, all we talked about, all the podcasts, the interviews, the experts, the analysis, whatever, all we heard about was how we're not worried about the defense. The defense is good. We gotta make sure that Jackson Arnold and Coach Freeze and these wide receivers get the ball and our offensive line, stays healthy. Like that. That's all we heard about all off season. We didn't hear. All we heard was glory, praise, hallelujah about the defense. The defense they're shutting them down in fall scrimmages. The offense can't do nothing. Blase, here, there, everywhere. They're all going to the NFL. Well, they didn't look very good Saturday against South Alabama Jaguars, with the exception of the defensive line. I'm going to exclude them from this segment because the defensive line looks sharp. Keldrick Faulk looks like the leader that I know he's going to be, know he is and continues to be. Expect great things to continue to come from him throughout the season. Look for Big Faulk to have a big game next week. I'm going to go ahead and lend you into that one right there. Look for Big Faulk to be a difference maker next week. Keldrick Faulk, number 15. But we'll talk more about that throughout the week. But yeah, defensive line, Big Walker, 35. Y'all saw him. He's stacking people up. Amaris Williams is really coming into his own. I hope that shoulder's not too sore and that he can play because he looks like an NFL player out there. Just to be straight up with you, Jared Smith. Hey man, boy, you got a bright future. I love it. Did y'all see 41 coming off the edge yesterday? That's a true freshman. That is a true freshman that looks like some of those historic defensive ends that Auburn has had. Stanley McClover, Quentin Groves, Antonio Coleman, just to name a few. He looks like one of them. He looks like big-time SEC defensive end, come off the edge, blow you up, sack the quarterback, knock the ball loose. I mean, just disruptive as can be. I'm extremely excited to see what Jared Smith is going to blossom into. And look for him to play this week, too, some more. So that defensive line, I ain't got too much to say bad about you. Not really. You look good on the defensive line. But my concerns, the back end, specifically the secondary, linebackers, the room's a little inexperienced, really inexperienced. I mean, DeMarcus Riddick, probably him and Woodyard's a senior, and Robert Woodyard looks good. But the rest of them, Xavier Atkins did not play at all at LSU last year. So this is all new to him. DeMarcus Riddick, he's still, we saw what he did last year based on pure athleticism and being able to play linebacker. But as far as just the mental part of playing linebacker, he's still developing. And so I'm not going to be too tough on that linebacker room. But the secondary, it's confusing to me. I don't know if they, and I hate to say this, God, I hate to say this, but it almost looks like there's lack of effort because I've seen some of these players put out film that shows really how good they are. And I'm going to start with Caleb Harris. Like, Caleb Harris, you came into Auburn last year underrated and really made a statement that you're a force to be reckoned with, that people are going to know who you are in the SEC, not just at Auburn. And it's been a fall off this year. It's been disappointing. I have seen Caleb Harris out of position every game. I have seen Caleb Harris miss tackles every game. And this is not what I saw out of him last year. So I don't know if something's going on in the young man's head. I'm not 100% sure what it is. If he's not taken to the coaching, we got a new coach, and I'm going to talk about that here in a little. Well, he's not a new coach, but he's coming back. We lost a coach in that room, Charles Kelly, and I'll come back and talk about that here in a second. But Caleb Harris, a lot of people expected a lot of big things out of you this year, and you're really just not answering that. And it's not because of it's because of what you put on film last year against good teams. So to think that you're disappointing us, and we really haven't even faced these good teams yet, it's what are you doing? Like what's not adding up there? And it really points to, I hate to say this, but just me knowing football and playing football, it points to kind of that lack of effort, that sophomore slump, that it took you this much to get to this position, and now that you're at this position and you're a starter and you almost feel entitled to it. And that takes away that desire and that motivation to really get out there and push yourself to that limit to be the best player that you can at during all phases of the game and against any opponent. And almost like rested on your morals. And that's a scary thing, because as a person, not just as a football player, like that's a mentality that you're going to have to develop yourself out of, Caleb Harris, if that's what it is, because it can haunt you in life. And, we don't want nothing but the best for these kids, regardless of how they perform on the football field, but there's a lot of life lessons in football. I've learned a lot of life lessons in football. I'm a testimony to that. So I hope I don't see that out of Caleb Harris. I hope that this is just a minor, little thing with him, and something clicks, this week. Hey, let's get it together, because we know what you can be, Caleb Harris. We've seen it, and that's what gets it, gets us to that. And he's the extreme case because he hadn't performed well all year. But there's others in that secondary. I talked about Kay and Lee at the beginning of the year. And this is a young man who had extreme upside his freshman year, forced his way onto the football field because he wanted it. Last year, there was a drop-off. I wouldn't say it was a major drop-off, but he didn't take that step from freshman to sophomore that you would expect out of good players to take. And I just don't know what's wrong, what's going on there with Kay and Lee. Like is your mind not in it, or are you not taking to the coaching? Or are you thinking about the NFL or transfer portal? Because there's some underlying stuff going on. It's not all just, we're playing South Alabama, or it's an 11 o'clock game, or we're tired. It's the first game of the year, in the Baylor example. It's the first game of the year, and we've hit a we hit a block, adrenaline block. We were so up at one point and we fell off. Eventually, all that stuff can get tossed out the window. There's something else. There's an underlying theme to all this, because when you keep putting it on tape week after week, you can't keep pointing to isolated incidents that took place throughout the game or throughout that week. It all comes together like there's something bigger than just this one thing. So I don't know. The secondary room, I just mentioned Caleb Harris and Kay and Lee, but they're not the only two. Sylvester Smith was inconsistent between last week and this week. Had a great week last week, all over the field. I congratulated him, applauded him, all that in my videos last week. And this week he came out there and looked slow. I said Sylvester Smith looked slow. The touchdown that they scored early in the second quarter, was it? I'm not sure what point in the game it was. Maybe it was, no, it was in the first half. The touchdown that South Alabama scored in the first half, where they ran the little out route, it was like an 8-yard touchdown, and he caught the ball and pretty much walked into the end zone on our guys. The announcer said that it looked like they undressed the defense, and it really did. But then there was nobody there to defend the goal line, but we had two Auburn players right in the end zone. Like, that's effort. It's third and goal. Like if you gotta lay your body on the line to stop them on that 1 yard line, Javon Robinson, and I can't remember who else was out there. It might have been Can Lee, to tell you the truth, but I think it was Robinson, number 5, Sylvester Smith, and Can Lee out there. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. And all three of them pretty much let the man walk into the end zone. It's just I don't know. I don't know. Jay Crawford's been kind of quiet this year. Don't know whether that's a good or bad thing. Sometimes when defensive backs, you don't hear a lot about them. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That just means that offenses respect them and they're not going to really run or throw towards them. So I don't know about that. Jay Crawford's kind of banged up right now, but man, what is going on with our defensive backs? Are we missing Charles Kelly? Coach McGriff, crime dog, that's our guy. He's been around Auburn for decades. Like, put out great secondary players. I mean, you look at the guys in the NFL: Jonathan Jones, Roger McCreary, Sherwood. Just good players. Carlton Davis. I could keep naming them off. Like Nico Thorpe. Like Crime Dog was a part of all that. Coach Wesley McGriff. I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue tied. But I don't know. I don't know if they played harder for Charles Kelly and they just can't. I know coaching's different, so maybe it was easier for them to get coached by Charles Kelly than Crime Dog. I don't know, but one thing I do know is that this room, the defensive back room, we're getting away right now. We're winning football games, so it's it's a concern, but it's not a problem. Well, when we start losing, if we start losing and Oklahoma has a field day throwing the ball on us, scores 30 points, and Mateer puts up 400 in the air, and they're completing slant route after slant route and hitching goes and beating the defense deep, and people are wide open, and we're busting coverage, and we're still missing tackles in the running game and not flying around like defensive backs should, then we're going to start pointing to them defensive backs. And Caleb Harris, and you saw a little bit of it in the second half in the South Alabama game. And I'm not sure if it was just because we wanted to get them off the field and get some of these young guys in there. But like I said a couple weeks ago, Anquan Fagans came to play football, number 21, or 5-star out of high school this year, true freshman from Parker. He came to play football. Eric Winters, number 25, he came to play football. So Rayshawn Pleasant, he's not a freshman, but he's a transfer, and he's had success in the past at Tulane and probably wants to extend his career into the NFL. He didn't come to Auburn to sit on the bench. Strader had a little bit of a iffy game, but I'm not even so sure if that was because of scheme or not. I really feel like that post route where they scored the touchdown, South Alabama did. You were on. Strader was on him. He was on his backside, but Caleb Harris bit on the run, and that's how he kind of fit up in there. So it's a little bit on Strader and a little bit on Harris, I feel like. But at the same time, Strader showed me good things on film other than that one play. So I hope these guys, they come to play. Don't get me wrong, because I think they're great ball players. But I hope they realize that you are not replaceable, Caleb Harris. You are not replaceable, Can Lee. You are not replaceable, Sylvester Smith. These young players are good enough to take y'all spots. And, and if it comes down to it, you got to put your best players on the field. So, hey, I hope they look at the tape that they put out for the first 3 weeks and say, you know what, guys, we're better than this. And it starts with Wesley McGriff, kind of acknowledging this problem and just saying we're better than this, and we're fixing to go out here and play football and play football the right way at these positions and take pride in being a defensive back and shutting down wide receivers and coming up and hitting running backs and making stops. So that's what I got with the defense. I hope to see a lot different this week in Norman, Oklahoma. And we're not going to get too more carried away on it. There's going to be more discussion throughout the week. Just want to point out that in the pregame video, I did call the game to be 31-14. That was my prediction, and the final score was 31-15. So, hey, pat on the back, pat on the back. We were close again. That's the second time this year that I have predicted the Auburn score and been dead on. First time was the Baylor game. I predicted the score to be 38-16, and Auburn scored 38-24, excuse me, and Auburn scored 38. And I also predicted the score this week to be 31-14, and Auburn scored 31. So, hey, maybe we're on to something, because I'm gonna always predict us to win. So if I'm getting right, maybe that means we're gonna be pretty good this year. I don't know. We'll see. But thanks for listening. Have a great Sunday, everybody, and war down, Eagle.